Look at what just happened. Spain, Switzerland, and now India have all walked away from buying America's most advanced fighter jet, the F-35. Together, these canceled deals are worth around $25 billion, money that will now go to U.S. rivals instead. The reason? Donald Trump's tariffs. By slapping massive taxes on imports from these countries, he thought he could pressure their governments on key issues. Instead, they're saying, enough. If you raise prices on our goods, we won't spend billions on yours. Spain is turning to European-made jets. Switzerland is refusing to reward a trade partner that makes business harder. And India, Washington's most important potential buyer in Asia, is now signaling it could look to Russia or China for its next-generation fighters. Modi says he is ready for this fight with the US and would not bend to Trump's wishes. That's not just a lost sale, it's a geopolitical gift to America's biggest rivals. And it doesn't stop with aircraft. When countries walk away from US weapons, they stop relying on American maintenance, parts, and training, eroding Washington's influence over their militaries. For India, this could mark a deeper shift toward BRICS, something they've held back from until now. We're going to break down how these cancellations happened, what they mean for US power in Europe and Asia, and why other nations could soon follow. In 2025, no Asian leader has been closer to Washington's inner circle than India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has sat across from Donald Trump in the Oval Office, held talks with Vice President J.D. Vance, and welcomed or met with multiple senior U.S. delegations. This wasn't casual diplomacy. These were deliberate, high-level engagements covering trade, defense cooperation, energy, and long-term strategic alignment. At the start of the year, New Delhi's goal was clear: to deepen its partnership with the United States. Yet now, headlines mock Modi for believing Trump was a trusted ally. The reversal has been swift and striking. To understand the fallout, it's important to see just how close the relationship had become. India had grown into one of the most valuable customers for the American defense industry. Since 2008, New Delhi has signed more than $20 billion in arms deals with U.S. companies. When Modi and Trump met in February, Trump pledged to not only maintain this trade, but expand it. The list of past purchases is extensive: C-17 Globemaster transport aircraft, P-8I maritime patrol planes, Apache and Chinook helicopters, advanced artillery systems, and cutting-edge surveillance gear. The military ties go deeper still. Regular joint drills like Yudh Abhyas with the U.S. Army and the Malabar naval exercises with Japan and Australia. India even granted the U.S. access to its ports for refueling and repairs, a low-profile but strategically critical gesture in the Indo-Pacific. That's why the cancellation of the $3.6 billion F-35 deal sent such shockwaves through Washington. It was the logical next step, shifting India from buying support aircraft and helicopters to fielding advanced fifth-generation fighters. The sale was central to a broader Indo-Pacific security vision, with India positioned as a key counterbalance to China. U.S. officials were even prepared to bypass MRFA rules to make the deal happen. That's how deeply Washington valued the partnership. But that vision didn't survive. Years of trust and careful diplomacy began to unravel almost overnight. And the trigger wasn't about fighter jets at all. It was about oil. The rift began when Washington reacted to India's unwavering appetite for discounted Russian crude. Even as sweeping Western sanctions tried to choke off Moscow's revenues, India kept buying millions of barrels every month. It refined the oil domestically, fueling its own economy, and in some cases sold refined products to other countries, effectively keeping Russian energy moving through global markets. India's oil trade is far too large for the U.S. to simply ignore. As the world's third-largest oil consumer and importer, New Delhi's purchasing patterns can shift global prices, alter shipping routes, and determine how effective sanctions really are. In the third year of Moscow's war in Ukraine, India spent a staggering 49 billion euros on Russian crude. That money didn't just keep India's refineries operating. It kept Russia's export revenues alive, blunting the economic pressure that Washington and its allies were trying to apply. From the U.S. perspective, this was about more than energy. It was about control. Sanctions are meant to cripple Moscow's ability to fund the war, but India's bulk buying diluted that strategy. For Washington, the ability to influence India's trade choices meant more than just punishing Russia. It meant shaping global oil flows, maintaining leverage in commodity markets, and ensuring that one of Asia's most powerful nations stayed aligned with American geopolitical priorities. Inside the White House, Donald Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saw India's actions as a direct challenge. Trump called the trade unacceptable. Bessent accused India of not being a great global actor and described the Russian oil purchases as a persistent point of irritation for the US. Then came the tariffs. First, Trump slapped 25% duties on Indian goods. Soon after, he doubled them to 50%. The message was unmistakable. Stop buying Russian oil or face serious economic pain. New Delhi refused to yield. Indian officials argued they were acting in the nation's own interest, pointing out that several other US partners were also importing Russian oil in various forms. The dispute quickly spilled beyond India. Trump issued a sweeping warning that every member of the BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, would face the same consequences if they continued such practices. It was a declaration of tariff warfare aimed at some of the world's largest emerging economies. One of the most visible casualties was the $3.6 billion F-35 deal. India pulled back, making clear that under the current conditions, the purchase was off the table. If New Delhi now turns to Russian or Chinese fifth-generation fighters, the fallout will extend far beyond a single contract. Such a shift would harden the Indo-Pacific against US influence, give Washington's rivals greater reach from the Arabian Sea to the South China Sea, complicate US naval operations, reduce opportunities for joint training, and weaken America's ability to protect its allies in a region already bracing for confrontation. The consequences ripple through multiple layers of US strategy. India is the only country in the region with the size, location, and military strength to meaningfully counter China's influence in the Indian Ocean. If trust erodes, America's Indo-Pacific posture becomes less secure. The American defense industry also takes a direct hit. Advanced platforms like the F-35 depend on large-scale production and long-term contracts. Losing India's fast-growing market hands opportunities to Russia, France, or even China, and opens the door to defense purchases in currencies other than the US dollar, bypassing American financial systems and weakening Washington's leverage. There's also the intelligence dimension. India's geography makes it a prime vantage point for monitoring both China and Pakistan. Strained relations could restrict intelligence sharing, leaving the US with fewer options for managing regional threats. And then there's the Quad, the security grouping of the US, India, Japan, and Australia. Without India's full commitment, it risks losing credibility as a counterweight to Beijing's ambitions. What we are witnessing is the slow unraveling of a strategic partnership that took years to build. This is no longer just about tariffs or oil or even fighter jets. It's about whether the United States can keep India close in an era when alliances are shifting rapidly and more countries are willing to defy Washington if it conflicts with their own interests. Each decision in the coming months will help determine not only the fate of US-India relations, but the broader balance of power in Asia. Meanwhile, over in Europe, the situation for Washington is going from bad to worse. You can see the split happening in real time. Two countries that have long been part of America's defense network, Spain and Switzerland, are now backing away from the US F-35 fighter jet program. This isn't just about money. It's about trust, political influence, and the unraveling of military partnerships that took decades to build. Let's start with Spain, a NATO member guarding both the entrance to the Mediterranean and access to the North Atlantic. Spain has been a reliable partner for decades, hosting US naval assets, joining NATO missions, and buying American aircraft. The planned F-35 purchase wasn't just another arms deal. It would have tied Spain into the American defense supply chain for the next 40 years. Training, spare parts, software updates, weapons integration, all flowing through US contractors. Now that plan is gone. Madrid has officially canceled any intention of buying the F-35 and is decisively choosing between the Eurofighter Typhoon and the Franco-German Future Combat Air System, FCAS. Its 10.5 billion euros, about $12 billion, defense budget for new fighter jets will now flow mainly to European suppliers. This is more than a procurement decision. It's a statement about European defense sovereignty and a refusal to depend on US systems that come with political strings. Then there's Switzerland. Famous for neutrality, Bern has still been a quiet but steady partner to Western defense. In 2022, it signed a deal for 36 F-35A jets valued at 7.3 billion Swiss francs, about $9.1 billion, one of the largest defense purchases in its history. That deal was supposed to lock Switzerland into decades of close ties with the Pentagon and Lockheed Martin. Now, the Swiss parliament is openly debating canceling it. The reasons are clear. Trump's tariffs hit Swiss exports with rates as high as 39%, and lawmakers are questioning why they should reward economic punishment with a multi-billion franc contract. To make matters worse, what was billed as a fixed-price agreement is now facing a price hike of up to 1.5 billion Swiss francs, about $1.9 billion US dollars. For a country where major defense deals often go to referendum, and where polls show deep public skepticism about the F-35, this is political dynamite. Losing Spain and potentially Switzerland strikes at the heart of US defense strategy. Every canceled order robs American contractors of decades of revenue from training, upgrades, and maintenance. NATO cohesion also suffers. Mixed fleets mean less interoperability, less shared intelligence, and more friction in joint operations. And with every gap, competitors, whether European, Russian, or Chinese, have a fresh opening to replace US influence with their own defense ecosystems. The cultural shift is just as significant. More European governments are talking openly about weapons they can control entirely, without foreign kill switches, dependency on US software updates, or fear of sanctions cutting off parts. Spain's rejection and Switzerland's defiance fit squarely into that mindset. Let's be clear, Washington didn't stumble into this. The Trump administration's mix of tariff wars, hard-sell arms tactics, and pay-up-or-else demands has left allies feeling like customers to be exploited rather than partners to be respected. The big question now is, will other NATO members follow? And if they do, how much of its defense dominance can America afford to lose before the shift becomes permanent? To stay updated with developments on this situation, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell.